Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I am the advertising manager for HGA, and I get to be your host today. We are sponsored today by Weave a Real Piece. We love those guys. They're always sponsoring all of our interesting guests, and we thank them so much. If you want to learn more about the wonderful work they do, go to weavearealpiece.org. They do some amazing exhibits, and they're supporting people who are making beautiful work throughout the world. Learn more about them again at weavearealpiece.org. We will take questions at the end of the program, the last 15 minutes. Please put them in the Q&A. We love having your chat, and every once in a while I can see them, but I can't all the time. So it's better if you put them in the Q&A. You can even put them in both, but if they're in the Q&A, I'll be sure to catch them. Today, we are as excited to have Emily Trujillo. Emily is an 8th generation weaver, Rio Grande Weaver from Chimayo, New Mexico. She initially learned to weave when she was 5 years old, but she didn't weave professionally until her 20s, and she's going to talk some more about that later. After graduating with a dual major in ethnology and psychology, she now works for her family's business gallery, Centinela Traditional Arts, focusing on education and outreach. Since beginning her weaving career, she has given lectures around the country and internationally on Zoom. She is a teacher at the Española Valley Fiber Arts, a mentor at the Los Maestros program in Chimayo, an award-winning participant in the annual Spanish market in Santa Fe, the head instructor and administrator of the Ariat Rio Grande Weaving Apprenticeship. She has dedicated her life to the art of Rio Grande weaving, and you'll hear her passion as she talks today, and the preservation of the culture, and continues to passionately pursue a career in educating the world on the beauty, history, and the art of Chimayo. Hey, Emily, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Did you get your tea?
I did.
What kind of tea is it?
It is licorice and mint, which is my favorite, and I just figured I should probably have tea. It's Textiles and Tea.
That is a great combination. I've never heard of that.
It's loose leaf, so you can see my last minute preparation. So
well, talk to us about how you got started. I know it's a family business, but talk to us more about how you got started in weaving.
So basically, I learned when I was 5, just like most of my family and my brother, and we had to make a special loom for me because I was so small, and we use walking counterbalance looms. So my dad is an engineer, so he had the capability to do it. I wanted nothing to do with it because I didn't want to be anything like my parents, and everyone asked me, "Oh, are you going to be a weaver?" But I learned, and I periodically, like once in a while, would pick it up as a teenager because it was fun. And then I got to college, and I actually, one of my majors is ethnology. It was the one that I last minute just decided to do. And so it's the study of culture. So I studied about all of these cultures that were dying all around the world, and I thought, I can do something about mine. So I wanted to pass it on to my children. And so I went, and before grad school, I studied with my parents for a year to make sure I knew the techniques and the history and all sorts of things like that, just so I could have a grasp on it. And then I fell in love with it. So I canceled. I had an internship at UCSD in neuroradiology, which would have been a much more lucrative career path. But I'm really glad I chose this one. And since then, I have been dedicating myself full time to weaving and educating and lecturing and doing all sorts of projects. So that's been my life goal, and I'm really glad that I chose it. So I wouldn't be here if I didn't like it and think it was wonderful.
Well, we're excited and glad that you switched also. Good for us. That's great. Well, first, let's talk about the history of your style of weaving. Now, we have 3 images up here, and one on the left, I believe, is the Rio Grande blanket. When they come up, we'll see them. The Rio Grande saltillo blanket. Yeah. And then the one on the right, I think, is the Chimayo, right? Oh, there's just 2.
It's on the left is the Rio Grande, which was the original weaving that the Spanish brought to this area. And then on the right is the Saltillo, which is actually a Mexican influence. And technically this is just a Saltillo. There is a Rio Grande Saltillo that came about here, but this
Okay.
is, it's beautiful and a really good example of tapestry and kind of what we learned from. So I thought it was a really good example. Like, I think it's a good example anyway.
Mandy, you want to go to the next slide? Because I think the next slide has the next two blankets. There we go. Now, what's the one on the left?
The one on the left is called the Vallero, and that is the first style to be developed in Chimayo. So in this area, so it's very important. These are the two designs that are very special to me, particularly because these are the ones that come from where I'm from. This is a part of my culture that there's only about 200 of us left alive. There are not very many of us. It's a small weaving town. And then the one on the right is called the Chimayo. And there's a lot of history behind that one. And it's very important to all of the people in this area, and it's a part of the industry. So that's why it's called the Chimayo, is that's what we're known for. Is this, it's geometric designs. There's a center design, two secondary designs, and then a stripe on either side. So that's what a big blanket looks like. And then there's these little lines in between called hospes. And that developed, so basically this design style was developed to be woven as quickly as possible so you could produce as many as possible for the industry. So it's a production weaving industry to weave these beautiful pieces and get as many of them out as possible. And so that's why they look complex and they are hard to do, but if you have enough practice, you can whip these out because you understand the logic. And that's kind of the magic of Chimayo weaving, is how quick we are at improvising designs, because we have a lot of practice. And that's something that makes, well, you know, a lot of weavers do that, but that's something that this logic of the geometric designs is something that's really special to us.
It's so beautifully balanced. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, would you, what is your earliest memories of weaving, and when did you start becoming more involved in the process? You talked about some at the beginning, but it sounds like you kind of came and went. And you said the earliest memory was when you were 5.
Yes.
What do you think turned you on to the process later on in life? What changed?
Well, it was studying cultures all around the world. So I focused in New Guinea, so indigenous cultures in New Guinea, but you know, I studied Navajo culture and all sorts of ones, and it really was important. But I grew up in an art gallery. So I grew up being educated and knowing all about this because my parents' house is a literal 30-second walk from the art gallery. So I spent a lot of time surrounded by this art. So to me, it's second nature, and it's just like a part of my life, and it always has been. So it's kind of a weird gray area, I guess, when you could say it came in, because it's always been there.
Well, when you went off to school, did you find that you wanted to go back to your own community and do more research?
No, I
find more about what you didn't know, or?
I had a whole adventure on my own. I went and I explored life and I learned a whole bunch, and then I realized what was important to me. So I had this whole adventure that was separate from my parents. I'm not going to tell you about the many mistakes I made, but oh my gosh, it was quite an adventure. But I came back and yeah, so it was just like this nice little escape for a while, because I lived in a different city because I did not go to college I grew up in Chimayo, so that's kind of a middle of nowhere town that's not really the middle of nowhere, but a city person would absolutely think it's the middle of nowhere. But, you know, so it's really far from any colleges or anything like that. So I had to travel, and I lived in the big city, and that was my big city adventure where I learned how to be an adult through, as I say again, lots of mistakes. So anyway.
But when you came back, did you start doing research? I know that I have like legends from my family about the community, but if I actually went in and started doing research, I probably would find more and more facts about where I grew up. Did you find you started doing that, more research to kind of fit together all of the tales that your family tells? Yes. And the actual history?
Yeah, absolutely. I have read a lot of books. And I've asked my parents a lot of questions, and I learned about my family and kind of the traditions within the family and kind of like the folk tales, I guess you could say. And then I also learned about like what people have researched, like what museums have to say. I've looked at old documents that kind of like, you know, track how history went. And it's just, I've done a lot. Like I've looked at museum collections at this point. I've done a lot of like deep dives into my culture. So I really want to make sure that I'm proficient, because my dad is pretty much the expert in Chimayo weaving and Rio Grande weaving. He's like the go-to, at least around here. And I wanted to be able to fill his shoes. And my mom as well. My mom is also very educated. You should hear them have debates, because like some of this, there's a lot of history here and it's not all documented. So you have like a lot of tales passed down from generations. And like, you know, with the Vallero star, there's a whole bunch of theories as to how that came to this area. And my personal one is because of all the influences of the East, is that I think the Vallero star came from quilting patterns. And I think that's how it came to be. But you could have a lot of different opinions about how that came about, because there's a lot of lore. So I learn all of that and I pay attention to all of that. And I have my own opinions and my takes and kind of how I think things came to be based on my own research and what, you know, the locals have to say. So.
Well, let me jump to another topic here. You're a spinner, right? You've done spinning?
Yeah, I spin.
Okay. How much do you spend? Like, do y'all have to spin all of your own yarn, or do you buy it pre-spun? Or
so there's quite a few different ways that we at this gallery get yarn. So we do a lot of producing. So we do not have time to spin yarn for everything, but we do in this gallery, we do a lot of preservation of our culture, which is why we all lecture and do so much research. And we do have a herd of churro sheep, but we only have about 14 sheep. So that's not enough to supply everything for all the rugs and all the weavers. And it's just also so expensive that we couldn't really make a living off of selling the pieces that much. So we we get from Clasgans, which is in New Richmond, Ohio, which is actually where weavers in this area have been getting their yarn for generations. But we do natural dyes as well. So we have commercial dyes, natural dyes, hand spun. We do hand spun that we put in natural dyes. But churro sheep, which is the Spanish sheep that we brought to this area, has so many rich colors that, like, honestly, we only dye the white. And, you know, there's so much different colors and different fibers that we use here, but it's all wool. Like even our warp is wool. It's all wool.
Is it all churro?
No, well, I mean, traditionally, so my ancestors all used churro because that's what they had access to. It's a peasant breed. That's what they brought to the area. And however, eventually when kind of more industrial, like you could have more like, what is the word? But you could have machines spin it for you. Mills. When mills came about, there was no need to spin. So the weavers of this area who were focusing on production so they could make a living, they forewent. So basically they stopped doing that because they had access to mill spun yarn. Just like they stopped making all of the pieces of their looms, and they would get, you know, metal reeds and metal, like oh my gosh, I can't remember the words. The heddles. So they would do heddles and reeds and all sorts of other things that were made things easier, and you didn't have to make by hand. That would be sturdier. So that's kind of what happened. But we're doing revival. So that's why I learned how to spin. Most of the people here don't really know how to spin. There are people that go to market that do spin, but you know, the people who work for the galleries, they don't usually know how to spin because they don't have to. But I learned because my family does that. My grandpa, my mom does a lot of it. My dad knows how, and I figured that I should probably know how. So I did. I do spin. It's not my favorite activity because, like, usually we spin, my mom likes to spin in the grease, all card. I'm not good enough at spinning to just spin in the grease. So that has all the plant fiber and all that stuff and the grease and stuff. So she just forgoes scouring. She just says absolutely not. But I have to go through the process because I'm not as good as her. So I'm like a little bit like, she makes it look so easy. So we're different, my mom and I. So yeah.
Well, one thing I noticed about your work was that it's much more tapestry-like quality to it because it's much more pictorial, I think. And you also have the more traditional works. So what is the attraction of each? And if you would talk about both of these pieces, that would be great.
Okay, so I love doing tapestry. But my thing is, so there's a little bit of history. So my parents do a lot of modern work with traditional work. So, you know, we all study the traditional patterns and things like that. So I've also done the same, but a lot of what I'm influenced by are my parents' pieces, which are more modernized versions of the traditional pieces. So mine take kind of an even more modern twist than my parents do. But like, so this is like a saltillo center. So this you could put in a saltillo. So traditional saltillo, it has this diamond. So I just didn't do a border and I just did the diamond because I love the center of saltillos. So that's kind of what this is. And actually there's a fun story behind the cerise piece. So this bright pink is my favorite color. And I found some of it hidden deep in the yarn boxes. And I was like, oh my God, Dad, I love this color. And he was like, ugh, cerise. Nobody buys cerise. So I waited for him to go to lunch because we wove in the same room. And then I made all the spools of that color I possibly could, an entire skein, and I wove that as far as I possibly could so he couldn't tell me no. And I finished it and I called it, "Can you take me seriously now, Dad?" Because it sold in, like, it went on the website and sold immediately. And since then, no one has complained about me using hot pink, as you can see in the piece next to it. No one complains anymore. But this one, I really love hummingbirds. I used to do watercolor. I've done a lot of different forms of art. But when I was a kid, I did a lot of watercolor and acrylics, and I loved painting hummingbirds. I loved hummingbirds and cats. So I've done so many different styles of hummingbirds, and you can like look at it. I love weaving thunderbirds. There's a thunderbird, and then there's like just, more modern, like these hummingbirds are not traditional, and then cardinals and things like that. But I like to do both. So, and this is definitely modern. This is very modern, but it has the same concept. It's like a modernized Thunderbird Chimayo. It has a stripe on either side. It's just not a regular stripe. It has tapestry in it, which is unusual for a Chimayo design. It has a bird in the center, but it's a hummingbird. And then it has these hospice coming from the side. So it has all of the elements of a Chimayo if you simplify it and dumb it down, but each element is modernized. So that's kind of how I like to weave, is I take all of the traditional elements and I study them, and then I study my parents' work, are more modern, and I do my own thing and I weave whatever I want. So.
Well, I'm curious, I'm kind of getting off track here. If you look toward the bottom of the one on the right, the more modern one, what is that little white thing?
Let me see. Oh, that's my signature.
Oh, is it? I like that.
Yeah, it's an E on top of a T. So it's, if you block out the little kind of part that goes underneath it, it makes an E, like the little stick that comes out from the bottom. And then if you cover the top two lines, it's a T, because my initials are ET, Emily Trujillo. So that's my signature.
Oh, that's great that you stuck that in there. It's not obtrusive, but it looks great. So is it hard to get this color?
Yes, they do not make it anymore.
Oh.
So the way that I have to get it is I have to do acid dyes. So I have to dye it myself now.
Oh, okay. Do you do a lot of dyeing?
Yes, my family does a lot of that. Mostly we work with natural dyes. We do indigo, cochineal, chamisa, which is a local plant. You sometimes hear it called rabbit brush, I think. And then madder root. And that's actually, I wish I could show you, but it's all blurred. But we have, maybe I can. Do you want to see it? Or maybe, I don't know. But I'm sitting next to all the natural dyes. So we do a lot of that. And then when we want bright colors that like you can't get with the natural dyes, so like the more, I don't know how to, you can get a lot of color with natural dyes, but we do the basic ones. And then any other color we usually do acid dyes for if we want a specific color, and we also don't necessarily want the striations as much. Is that we will do acid dyes, and that's how I get the hot pink. Is it's not, I think prickly pear gets, I don't want to, like, it's been like a decade since we dyed with prickly pear, so I don't remember exactly.
I think that would be a tough color to make.
Yeah,
consistently make, I would think. Yeah,
to get that vibrant of a color, like that hot of a pink, is, I'm not sure if you could get a natural dye to do that, and I kind of doubt it, to be honest, but I'm sure someone could find that. Anyway, okay.
Well, you were talking about symbolism, so we're going to look at this next piece, and it's called Timeless Enchantment, and it is full of imagery. And would you talk about the use of, and maybe I should say your personal use of symbolism?
Yeah, okay. So I called this piece Timeless Enchantment because I grew up, New Mexico is called the land of enchantment, and I've always told people that I think it's timeless because I absolutely love it here. So I think it's beautiful. So this is a whole bunch of, these are traditional Pueblo houses with coyotes howling on the hills. This is the Rio Grande down here, this river with a whole bunch of life next to it. At the top is a traditional thunderbird, which is traditional. You see it in both Pueblo Indian weavings and Chimayo weavers. So, and it's kind of, it's woven into the border, so it's kind of subtle. So it's in the sky, kind of looking down. It's kind of symbolizing that tradition kind of overlooks and protects what we have here. And then in the center is an hourglass representing that New Mexico is timeless. So that's kind of where it gets its name. And that's all the symbolism. It is a New Mexico landscape of all the things that I grew up around. And then the sky, which kind of puts in the culture, the Thunderbird, which puts in the cultural aspect to it, and then the hourglass, which is just a simple, regular, normal, everyday symbol. And then it also, oh, I should mention is that it's a saltillo. So it's a modern saltillo. It has this diamond in the center. It has a complex background. Well, complex, it gets way more complex. And then it has a border going around it. So it is a traditional saltillo in ways, but it's also a very modern saltillo. So it touches on my, our designs as well as being a modern landscape. So.
Well, as you weave and you go and you do a rug and then you do another one and you do another one, do you find that you come up with your own personal symbols? Or you start making symbols in your own way, I should say, maybe?
Yeah, so everyone kind of has their own style of Thunderbird they like to weave around here, and I came up with my own. So mine has a headdress, so it looks more like a cardinal, which is what I was talking about. So I do that, and it's like we each kind of have one interesting thing is that I don't know so much if there's like unique symbolism. I weave patterns the way that I weave patterns and is very different from how my parents weave patterns. They're very different. If you look at our pieces, they're very different. I probably weave more like my mom than my dad, but that's another. But let's see, what was I talking about?
Your own symbolism.
Oh yeah, so I have my own kind of ways that I weave the symbols that we have, the traditional symbols, is I have my way that I weave landscapes. I have the birds that I like to weave. I have kind of different, and I mean, like I've woven more realistic hummingbirds as well, just so you know. But it's, I think that kind of my logic is what is different from other people is the way that I like we each have numbers we like because this form of art is actually all geometry. So I luckily am very good at math because it's all geometry. It's just a whole bunch of shapes put together. And the numbers that I use, so like I like fives, I like 4, 5s, and 10s. My mom likes 3s, 9s, and 15s. Like we all have different numbers that we like to incorporate into our designs, and you can see that. And that's why you can actually look at older pieces and say, well, I think this one might have belonged to this person. Like I think this person might have it, because you can kind of see patterns that we like and design things that we like and numbers that we like. So yeah.
What do you think is the attraction of the numbers? Why do those attract you and the other ones attract your mother?
So it's actually because of the math we can do. If we have practice, we can think, oh, like if I move if I move 4 threads at a time, right? Or I'm moving 4 rounds, which means like going back and forth and back and forth. I know a lot of you weave. So it's like a round is when you go back and forth and basically you make a specific amount of progress, right? So this is, we weave specific sizes. So that is a 40 by 60. So I know that if I weave this number of rounds, I'm going to make it this far in my piece. So I'm going to make it a 1/2 inch or something like that. So I want 2 1/2 inches or something along those lines. So I know that I need to take this many steps in order to get this exact 1/2 inch. And some people like to think in 1/2 inches, they like to think in full inches, 2 inches, and things like that. So it's basically math is why you choose your numbers. And that's kind of why we latch on to a logic, is that we think quickly on our feet. So it's kind of, we build this way of thinking, each one of us. And that's why we have different numbers.
Huh. I would have never thought of that. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, when you teach, do you teach people that they need to find their numbers or?
Yeah, I teach, the way that I actually teach is, and I found that it's very useful, is I talk about units on a line a lot. So when I'm talking about threads, because we move individual threads and we take each thread into account for tapestry, right?
Right.
So I teach them in a very mathematical manner. I'll sit them down. I'll say this many units on a line. We're moving this many at the end of this pick. We want to make sure that this color has taken this much territory. So it has this many units of a line, and this one has this many units of a line. So I very much lean on that concept because they'll take it forward and they'll use it. And so, yeah, I lean heavily on math, and it's on Chimayo. In Chimayo, you actually don't have to use too much math. That's one of the beautiful things about it, is that you can, like, for first time weavers, is that it, you know, you can weave whatever you mark. Okay, well, I want to weave a 5-inch design, so you mark at 2.5 inches, and then you can do whatever you want. You just have to reverse it. So a Chimayo requires less math because you can just mark where your halfway point is. So yeah, that's one of the appeals of Chimayos and quick thinking, is that you don't have to do as much math. But for a saltillo, getting on Timeless Enchantment, getting all of those, like the white border to match up without the 2 diamonds of color touching, was a lot of math. And that was just my equations. My husband looked at that and was like, ew. So like, yeah.
Do you have to take it out and put it back in a lot?
Oh God, yes. There's actually, so if you make a big mistake, you have to make the choice if you want to incorporate it into your design, if you want to unweave, or if you want to live with your mistake. And I do a lot of unweaving because I think one of the pieces here, it'll show you it's really complex. But then another thing you get really good at is, because you've studied math, you are able to kind of calculate, if I, you know, every other round take 1 extra thread because I forgot to take 2 threads, like I forgot to take a step, you can kind of calculate how to slowly make your angle a little sharper or a little slower to get back on track. So it requires just a lot of thinking. And I know I keep talking about math, but it really is a lot of thought. If you're thinking about distance, and like this distance and this distance, like you're trying to fit a specific size, is how we do it, because it's a tourist industry. So yeah, it's that logic.
But we're going to look at some details of the Timeless Enchantment. And the one on the right, the one on the right, it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look closely at it, you can see, I think those are your hands, right?
Those are my husband's.
Sorry, your husband's hands. And I included this picture just so I could show the size of this, because that's only half what he's holding up, right?
Yeah.
So you could have easily just done, you know, your piece that wide, but you chose to do very large piece. So why do that? Why? Because that's a lot of work. Why did you choose to go larger?
It's because I have these ideas for designs, and the bigger it is, the more details I can kind of include, or at least feels that way. Like I could get really small, but I can really stretch my ideas and like make them larger so I can add more details and kind of really, I'm going to use the word complicate, but like really show what I can do and like show how much I can pay attention to it much. And I just at time pay attention to it once, and it's like, I just have more fun because I'm thinking more and I have much more space. You can think of it like a canvas. If you have a small 20-inch canvas, you can't really fit that much tapestry design, like your little angles, it's going to be squished. So it's like, you know, if you have a square, like if you have a big square, you can, it'll be a lot higher as well. But it's like, if you have a little square, if you want to get it square, it's going to be squished like that. But the bigger canvas you have, the more room you have to think and kind of do whatever you want. And I only have a 20-inch loom. So like in terms of my width, the width I can make is 20-inch. So I weave 2 pieces and sew them together, as you can see. And that's really hard to do, for the record. I have practiced my beating and like how hard I beat and like how big my hills are for many years so that I can actually do this. And it is so much practice.
It's hard. I mean, I've only tried to do it once in a workshop, and I thought I was spot on, and I took them off the loom and it was like, you know, it was this off. So it really is difficult. Are there, I mean, do you use like tape markings and things like that?
So it requires consistency. And then you can look over here that I have this white border marks where everything in the center. So each time there's a point, if you look at this white border, kind of, you know, the last color in the border, this matches up with where the river kind of touches the other side. So there are marks on the border that tell me where I'm going to meet up again. And as long as I have a perfect count of these numbers, like if I go 5 steps out and 10 steps in, as long as I'm consistent about it, it will come out perfectly, but you have to be consistent about it.
Do you have a documenting system, like you write down 5?
Yes.
Out?
Yeah,
I
and
couldn't
like I
remember
said, this border is simple because it's 10 in, 10 out, 10 in, 10 out, 10 in, 10 out. And then, at the center, I remember these little, they're not little, well, they are little triangles, but they're not like, never mind. But, so it's like I have markers where each one of these shapes starts and stops, but I have kind of three things going on at once if you look at it. So, well, I mean, you have the border, the background, and the center design, and each one of them has their own logic and how you think about it. So you're paying attention to a lot of things at once. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. It's amazing. Well, you use incredible colors too. You're outside of the pink, which is incredible in itself, but you also use other strong, beautiful colors. So would you talk about how you choose your colors and what they mean for you?
Yeah, so I do actually, there are a lot of different ways I choose my colors. I have like this one is made from, I have a lot of leftover spools. So like, it's like one piece, I'll have made more spools and I have all of these organized. And for pieces like this, I like collect these colors that I think will look to get good together. And in my head, I kind of will like close my eyes and imagine where I'm putting each color and how thick each color is going to be. So that way I have a general layout of where my colors are going to be. And then I kind of do whatever I want following those parameters. And then if I feel like it's not coming out the way that I want, then I'll alter that. And like, once again, just kind of do some like planning and reevaluating of what I'm doing. And you're constantly reevaluating on this too. It's like, if you don't like something, the way it's coming out, like these take so long. So sometimes you need to reevaluate. And then sometimes I'm just sporadic. I'm like, whoa, what would be really cool right here? Orange. So you throw in orange or something like that. And, let's see. I also do a lot like I'll go outside and I will look at like a specific color, or like I'll look at a flower or things like that. And I'm like, I like that color. It inspires me. So I really try not to get bored with how I choose to design. Because it's just, there's so many ways and so many places you can draw colors from, and there's a lot to observe, and you can look at old pieces too. And then sometimes I'll be dyeing yarn and I'll like put them together and I'm like, wow, those colors look great. And it's like, I help my dad. My dad is the main dyer and I assist and we dye yarn together and things. I've been helping since I was a little kid. He'll be really mad and he'll be like, she doesn't dye on her own. So it's a family thing for the record. If he's watching, I love you, Dad. I don't mean to offend you. But yeah, there's so many different ways I get color. It's
I bet people didn't realize when they tuned in today, not only are we doing, talking about art and weaving, we're also talking about family dynamics. That's a big cool. But it's true for any family, right?
It's a family tradition.
It is. So there's not one person watching who doesn't go, oh yeah, I remember my dad and I would do that. And,
yeah.
Well, and let me ask you this, and you may have just answered this because you said you do it both ways, but do you ever just sit down and draw it out, or do you draw anything out, or do you just sit down and go?
So I sometimes, Timeless Enchantment, I did draw it out, and I'll quickly draw you what I drew. But on occasion, you do not do very much detail. You make the equations as you go and you think on your feet, because if you make a mistake, everything's off.
Yeah.
And you don't like, you don't want to put a ton of work in and be like, wow, this looks terrible, when you could just improvise and like change it to whatever you want, right? So it's like I keep saying, it's a lot of thinking on your feet. So I do draw it out, like as I'm about to show you. I know this is gonna look really dumb to a lot of people, but it's, this is what I drew. Oh, can you see it? Let's see. So it's this little bird thing looking thing on the top, a diamond in the center, 3 little hills here, what looks like a coyote, or what is a coyote, but looks like a potato. And then these little zigzag for a border. And that's what I drew. So,
wow.
And then I made the rest of it up as I went.
That's a nice combination.
Yeah.
It is.
We're constantly writing down numbers is basically what we're doing, is we're writing down numbers so we know what we're doing. When we reverse it or when we get to the second half.
Now, do you archive all that? Is there like a book somewhere that said rod number such and such, or, enchantment and blah, blah, blah?
I could, but I don't. I just will randomly in my workspace, because I have a whole room dedicated in my room, and I'm like, oh, I remember that piece, and I'll like throw it away. I probably shouldn't, because it's really cool to look at. Like, I wish I had I wish I had a picture of some of my math or the drawings that I do. It looks really cool and it like is really cool, but it's like sometimes it will make no sense if you look at it like a year later. You're like, what was I doing? What does that mean? Who wrote this? Was this a 5-year-old? Like, I feel like a 5-year-old would write this better. But yeah, so I do find them periodically, and I do sometimes draw little designs out, just so you know. I would show you my sketchbook if I had it, but
So you do
yeah,
have a sketchbook.
yeah, I do. And I'll like write down ideas and things like that, and then I'll make them way more complicated. So these are the things that I draw, these little doodles.
Mhm.
And that's me. I know my dad, who is an engineer, he does his pretty detailed, like much more than I do. And he'll draw it out a lot more. He likes doing a lot of modern stuff that's like, I wish I could show you these things, but like his modern is like very modern and doesn't necessarily touch on a ton of like traditional stuff. He'll do complete modern that is just like doesn't look like Chimayo weaving at all or Rio Grande weaving at all. And he'll, for those ones, he does a lot of detail for them. Whereas like his other ones, he'll do more improv. And I've done some that I do draw out in more detail, but I hardly ever do that because I'm like, this is boring. Like, I find it boring to not be able to create as I go, to be honest.
Well, let's look at this next one because I think this may reflect a little bit what you're talking about. The next one we're going to talk about is Taste the Tempest. And this has so much energy. Oh my gosh. And my question was going to be, does this reflect your own energy? And I think we would all say, yes, you have lots of energy, but talk some about this piece, if you would.
Okay. So this one is called Taste the Tempest, and this is my most recent showpiece. I only get to weave a big one about once a year because I have to save up money so I can like take the time off. But this one was actually, I love hyper energetic songs. And I was like, I really want to weave this energy. And I found this song that I really like. It's called Taste the Feeling, but Coca-Cola like trademarked that. So I wasn't about to fight them. So I called it Taste the Tempest, which is a mixture of the name of the song and the band that did it. So this follows, I kind of was like, I really want to match this energy, which I'm a really bubbly, effervescent person is how people most describe me. This is calm. Usually I'm like flailing everywhere. So this is like a really good match of my energy and how I feel, but it's actually following the rhythm of a song, which was just a fun project I had. So this is my attempt to capture energy and like a feeling and a mood, and it follows the song. And I absolutely listened to that song a lot during it. And I was like, this is how I capture this. This is how I want to capture this moment, and things like that. So, and this piece is all about capturing energy and movement. Yeah.
Well, it is high energy. Now, this is at least 2 panels, right?
Yes, it's 2 panels again. And I wove the same panel and then flipped it upside down. So this one required even more matching. And I messed up a little bit, actually. You can see that on the second half. Well, maybe I won't point that out. No, it's perfect.
Don't tell us. That's okay.
I made no mistakes in this piece.
It's perfect. Wow. It's amazing. Do you ever have problems with the color matching, or do you always have enough yarn when you start?
Oh, man. Well,
this is going to be a good story. I can tell.
I'm much better now, but I've definitely spent many days and nights crying about the mistakes that I've made in terms of not measuring that properly. So now one of the reasons I have so many leftover spools is because I'm like, I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen to me again. So yeah, I definitely have had some rough nights where I made that mistake and I called my mom's like, Mom, I messed up so bad. And she'll be like, oh, did you do the thing? And it's like, yeah. So
well, there's not a person watching who's not done it. So
yeah, I know.
We're in all that boat. We're all in that boat because we've done that. If I just knew I had enough yarn. What do you mean I don't have enough yarn? Well, this is amazing. It's just so high energy. So the next picture we have is of you in your studio. It's the family studio, I'm assuming. Yeah. And it's you and your mom and one of your students, right? He's one of your students?
Yeah, that's one of my students from the Los Maestros program.
Oh, okay. All right.
I take on a lot of kid students.
We talked about that in your bio. Would you talk more about what is that program? It sounds fascinating.
It's like a preservation program, which is like, it's another preservation program of Chimayo culture. So it takes local youth and it teaches them how to make acequias, how to do tin work, how to do retablos, how to do weaving. So I'm the weaving teacher. I do the weaving section. So I do, and they do like straw applique and like jewelry and things like that. So it's this program that does a whole bunch of preservation and teaches the youth about the culture. And that's what the Los Maestros program is about. And so I take on a lot of students from that. I have 3 kids that do that program that came and wove with me for a while. And yeah, and then the rest of them, like they see me every year. So, or it's like they saw me that year and then I'm doing this next year. So it's like, I want to say every year, but it's like I see Felix all the time. That's Felix. His name is Felix. He's the cutest little guy.
Hey, Felix.
Yeah.
Hope he's watching. He's famous now.
Yeah, right? He'd love
So
that.
when you talk about the family and all the different duties everybody has to have, how is it divided of who does what?
So my mom, her degree is in business, and her business final was she made this business. So she made this business. So she does all the administrative stuff and then she weaves in her free time. And then my dad does a whole bunch of because he's the one who's in his family. So a lot of people pay attention to that. And so he does a lot of the and my mom does a lot of teaching too. And then my dad does a lot of he'll do the dyeing and the handiwork, and he'll also weave as well. And then I have been training to do it all because it's just me. So I've been trying to do as much as I possibly can, and it's been really hard and really stressful, but I'm trying to, hopefully we'll find a way to balance it out and maybe find help and stuff. But the problem is it's a dying industry, and it's kind of out there, so it's kind of hard to find help, and it takes so long to learn that it's really hard. It's it's a problem, which is what I'm working on. So
well, what parts of the family business do you really enjoy, and what parts do you not enjoy so much?
Oh, I hate the administrative stuff, like the paperwork. I hate that, but I absolutely love going out there and educating people. We have all these beautiful works, and we'll tell people all about the history, and they can ask questions. And then I absolutely love teaching. It's my favorite thing. There's actually a student of mine is here in the gallery weaving. I'm teaching her, or I'm going to teach her. She's here to learn, and she's learning a Vallado star. So that's what she's doing. She's really proficient at this point. She's doing the really hard stuff now. So I love teaching. It's my favorite thing. I always have the best students. I don't know what it is about fiber artists, but they're actually the best. And then I like the creative aspect a lot. So it's I really like the art side. So it's more of I like my dad's role as opposed to my mom's role. So that's that. And I know that my mom doesn't want to do the administrative stuff, but my dad is like me, and he's a total space case, and he'll misplace paperwork, and it drives everyone nuts. So that's kind of our dynamic. Is a little wild and crazy here because we're just a family, and we each have our quirks, and we're all aware of them, and we kind of bounce off of each other. So
I love that. So what's next for you?
So in terms of this, I am doing a lot of revival work. So the apprenticeship program is kind of my baby. I'm working to make it a permanent program. So I do a lot of work with Ariat Boot and Clothing Company. So I don't know, some of you might know it. So they're the ones who give the grant. They license designs from us, and they put me in charge of this program because I do a lot of teaching, and I really was the one who was available for it, and I was happy to do the work. So that's something I do. I'm working on teaching. I want to aim do after school programs and things like that, but I'm in the process of setting those up. Right now I'm working on doing fashion industry things because I'm trying to preserve this art form by getting attention to it. From trying to do new alleys, essentially I keep wanting to say venues, but basically I figure that if I get into fashion and kind of get people out there and looking at it and be oh, this might be something that I could enjoy. I could weave and make these fashion stuff, this cool, unique thing of that people youth might be more into it. You know what I mean? If they're making clothing and stuff like that, I think that would be interesting. I did some research on this, by the way. So I'm working on that. I have some clothing items, and I might be getting to work with some people on that, but it's I haven't done that much branching out because right now I'm curating a museum exhibit actually at the Museum of Spanish Colonial Arts. That's my current project. I'm doing it's about time, it's about designs throughout generations, like how it changes.
Hmm.
So that's my current project that I'm focusing all my energy in, because I have to weave pieces for it, because I don't have very many, because I sell all of mine, which is like the most amazing problem to have. But I also have nothing to put in this museum exhibit, so I'm like just weaving pieces for it as fast as I can. So everything else is on hold except for the bare minimum of the Ariat project, the Ariat apprenticeship program. I just call it the Ariat project because I work so much with them. I do a lot of meetings with them and stuff. And we just did a video, so it's a promotional video. So like some of my students that were in the program, the first program, came and we did a whole bunch. We talked about why it was important, and then Ariat's going to put that on their website. And so it's this big project that I'm trying to make even bigger, because I feel like teaching and just getting new people interested is the best way to save this art form. Because I said, there's not very many of us alive. Like, this is a weaving town, and most of the youth have moved away from this weaving town, and most of them never learned to weave. So most of the weavers are older, and I'm actually the youngest in terms of the gallery. I'm the only one that does it professionally out of all of the gallery owners and all the gallery's children. I'm the only one. I'm the only one that came back. So yeah.
When will that exhibit? What's the time frame for that to open?
Oh, it opens on October 6th. So
Oh wow, it's close.
yes, that's why
Oh
I'm
wow. No
so
wonder
hard.
you're working so hard.
Yeah.
Woo.
It opens on October 6th, and I still have 2 pieces I need to finish, and they're both one sewn in half. So it'll be really cool. It has all of the designs in it. It has one for my great grandmother and great grandfather. It has ones for my grandfather. It has ones for my mom, my dad, and myself. And they're all put next to each other, so you can see kind of the difference in logic and how it's kind of developed over time. So that's kind of, it's like a educational thing where it educates people, and you can kind of see how history has affected it throughout time. Because I did not get into that, but this is all based on like the influences of this area. There's a lot of history behind it. Like, this is a very culturally rich tradition.
I hope you'll if you got the details of that, you'll send that into HTA. We can put it on our calendar.
Oh, Jana would love that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's my exhibit, but she like, it's I'm the curator, the guest curator, but Jana, I consider her the head, and she would love that.
That'd be great.
That would also,
because everybody's going to be asking about it. I know they will.
yeah, no, it's going to be really cool. I'm really excited. We picked some good pieces for it. So we got some back from collectors as well. So like, I got some
nice.
pieces back. So it's really, we're collecting them. And I think it'll be really cool. We're borrowing from other museums that have our pieces in it. So it's going to be cool, and you're going to learn a lot. So I would love visit it, you guys. I'm so excited. It's my passion project.
There you go. Well, we got some questions. Let's ask questions. How's that? All right. This is from Susan Christie. She says, with an anthropology degree centered on ethnology from 1965 at the University of Minnesota, we were limited in scope to Western Island archaeological studies in this country. Anthropology was an early social science, which included Margaret Mead, of course, Alfred Kroeber. I eventually found the work of Oscar Lewis and Lauren Vanderpost. I want to know if you studied cultures of the Middle East, the Far East, and roamed around the world. Turkey,
Absolutely.
Ireland, Scotland, Italy. And
Absolutely.
one more question. Do you have dogs?
Oh yeah. Oh, I have a dog. And usually if I was doing that at home, you would have heard her by now. I have a dog, and I absolutely studied all of that. I took classes studying like stuff in Europe, and I'm still studying it because there's influences from all over, just so you know. I'm still studying cultures all over. But it's like I told you, I did a lot. I found indigenous cultures of New Guinea the most interesting. Like, I loved that. I studied Africa, Europe. I did a lot of studies on like Brexit. So that was an interesting subject. So I definitely studied a lot, and I studied Margaret Mead and all sorts of things. So it's like I have a whole bunch of background in like a whole bunch of things. I studied globalization as well. That was another thing I found particularly interesting, and I thought it was very important to kind of understanding culture as it is now. So
how many weavers do you have working in your business?
So if you want to know how sad the business is dying is, and the industry, I should call it the industry, is there's about 10 of us now, including me. But in the 90s, we had over 40 weavers. And then Ortega's, who's another gallery here, we're the smallest. They had over 100 weavers at that point, and now they have 14. So that's how small and how few weavers exist today.
Eileen Lukes wants to know, what is the size of that landscape weaving? I think that question popped up when you were showing the one about color, and they were kind of a mirror image on top of each other, except the colors were a little bit different.
Oh, actually so the two pieces with cerise bright pink, those are 30 by 30s, and then the rest of them were 40 by 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she wants to know, do you sell online or only at the shop?
We sell online, so all of our pieces are online.
Okay. How many warp threads to the inch? This is from Ann Bird.
8 threads per inch.
There you go. Pamela wants to know, can we see your studio on the dyed yarns?
Oh yeah, hold on, can I?
Sure, you just go down there to where your video image is.
Yeah.
Click the caret and turn off the blur. There you go.
So these are the natural dyes we have. So those are what
Wow.
we have after our last dyeing season. And then there might be people here, just to warn you. This is our gallery. So you can see all these pieces.
Oh, look at the looms. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So these are Spanish floor looms. This one was made by my grandpa. So this is over 100 or almost 100 years old. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
But this is the gallery, and then there's other rooms back there, but this is kind of what we have. And there's blankets here. So they're sized specifically for the tourist industry. So there's a lot there. And you know, there's only 10 weavers, and you can see they're hard at work. So yeah.
This is from Victoria Neighbors. Does your dad still rinse the dyed wool in the creek near your gallery?
Oh yeah, we do. He makes other people climb in. I just want you to know that when I was a kid, he was like, I'll pay you $0.25 to get in there. I was like, oh my gosh, a bouncy ball. And then I got older and I was like, oh, that was child labor. He should have paid me way more. Yeah, no, and I climb in there a lot. That's a lot of my job, because my dad is getting up there. So I love standing in the river, and I always have, or the little acequia.
That's funny. Oh, Pam Kicklighter said perhaps HGA should do a magazine spread on the exhibit Emily is opening in October. Well, Pam, I have to tell you, I thought the same thing. We'll have to talk to our editor and see what she says.
That would be
Diane Field said, can you post the dates and the location? Where's the location? Is it in your town, or where's
no, it's a museum in Santa Fe.
Oh,
So
Santa Fe.
it's called the Museum of Spanish Colonial Arts. It's MOSCA. And so yeah, it's on Museum Hill.
Okay. If somebody is Googling that, would you put it in the comments over here? I'm kind of looking to see if somebody sees that. Would you post that?
Oh, and it opens October 6th.
Okay.
And it goes up until they close for January. So I think it'll go till December. She wishes that it had been longer, because she just didn't realize. But it also, just so you know, they thought it was such a cool concept that they're closing, I think it's like 4 of their permanent exhibit rooms. So for it.
Wow.
So it's going to be an exhibit for them. Yeah, no, they really like my idea. So
Karen LeBlanc. Hi, Karen. You should definitely pursue more fashion weaving. Do you have any pictures of your current pieces?
For fashion weaving, no, I haven't actually gotten to do anything with that yet, because I've been so like I have had so many projects this year that I just haven't been able to. I was supposed to be able to do it in the middle of this year, but then I got asked to do this museum exhibit, and I needed to finish that piece for Spanish market. So basically I have so many projects year round, but I basically want to do, so with these traditional designs, I kind of want to make jackets that have panels on the back that is like stained glass in a way that you get little windows into the design. And that's like, you know, I'm sure other people have done that, but they haven't done that with this specific style. And this is so beautiful. So I really want to just kind of do that concept and like kind of use these traditional Chimayo designs in panels. And it's been done before. Like there are like Levi or Ralph Lauren did some stuff with us, like Ariat licensed design, or Ariat licensed designs from us. KG Jeans or something, AG Jeans, it's something. They did panels from us, but I want to do, instead of focusing on like a mass production, I want to focus on individual art pieces that haven't been done before, because that way they can each be unique. But it's like, you know, I would maybe make like 5 or 6 of the same design and then move on, right? Or like not make it so much of an industry. But I want to get into fashion, and also because I don't like production weaving. I'm not like a mass weaving type person, but I definitely have ideas and I just need to work on them. I just need a break from everything is the problem. Because I teach like, I've taught 4 classes this year outside of the apprenticeship, which is a 3-week long program. And by the way, the apprenticeship gets people jobs at the gallery at the end. So I'm training them to get jobs at the gallery. That's what the apprenticeship is. So that's a thing that I work with all my students, and I still work with my students. I still help them out after they're gone. And like, I weave for Spanish markets. So that takes 4 months for me to just weave pieces for it. Usually those pieces you saw, those big ones, they take 3 months out of my year.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, that's 3 months that I can't do anything. And then I have to weave other pieces for Spanish market. And then I have like all these projects like the museum project, and I have to weave pieces for like the gallery. And so it's like, once things calm down, I will absolutely be working with that. And it's like, as I said, I might be doing a collaboration project, but it's like, I still have to reach out. I haven't had the time to really get into that, but I really want to work with people. So if anyone has any ideas that they think that it would be great to like use these designs for, like, feel free to reach out. Like, I have so many ideas and so many things, which I have so much to do is the problem. And it's like, next year is when I'm going to focus on it. I put aside from January until my apprenticeship program that will be run in the summer again, is that I want to focus on weaving fashion pieces, and that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So, and as I said, I'm going to have that project, but.
Anne Satteroff Walker has a question, and it's a good question. I should have asked this already. She wants to know about your students that you're training and teaching. Yeah. Is there ever an issue regarding appropriation? Do they have to have an Indian heritage before they can do it, or? So
it's actually, so for just to clarify, it's actually Spanish. So this is
Spanish. I mean Spanish, not Indian.
Yeah. No worries. It's there's a huge gray area. Though it's more of my personal view, and I talk to a lot of people, is that it is our culture. I do teach a lot of people who are not Hispanic. And the way that I see it is, as long as they don't say, this is my heritage, and they're not like trying to like put other people, be like, well, I know this isn't mine, but I'm going to take this opportunity away from someone whose heritage it is. Like, there are so many jobs at these galleries that it's just the way that I see it is, the only way the next generations are going to have a chance at having these jobs is if the industry keeps going. And there are not very many of us left. Like, this is a small town. And like, an example is, one of the reasons it was so prominent is during the Great Depression, the weavers of this area were not affected because it was such a lucrative industry. That's how important it is to the culture around here, of that it was, people are like, this is a way of life, this is how we survive. But then that's not a way of life anymore. That's not something that people think about. So, you know, I'm training a whole bunch of people, but all of my students thus far have acknowledged that it's not their culture, and they do feel bad about it, or they feel a little awkward about it. But I personally am like, this is an opportunity that is not taking away any opportunities from anyone whose heritage it is. It's helping teach. Like, I am happy to teach people as long as, you know, they're not like, this is my heritage. And personally, it can 100% be your identity. Like, this is an art form. It can be a part of your identity. It's just not like, you know, you weren't born with, you know, Spanish blood or something. I don't know. It's just, it's an art form, and I don't want to take it away from anyone who might be inspired by it, if that makes sense. I just also don't want people to be like, oh no, this is my heritage. Like, it doesn't matter that it belongs to someone else, right?
Right.
That's how I personally view it, but that's a gray area. And not everyone agrees with me, but
yeah, I've heard people describe it as saying, instead of me saying I'm a Chimayo weaver, I would say I weave in a Chimayo style.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not trying to own the heritage. I'm just reproducing the art form or art style.
Exactly. So, exactly. Yeah. That's how I view it, of like, it's an art form, and I don't think that anyone should be told they can't at least try it. I mean, I'm sure there's like very spiritual ones. I do not want to say that that applies to everything, because I know there's a lot of spiritual cultures. Like there are things, like I told you, I studied Navajo and I do a lot of work with them. I went to Sheepa's Life this year and did a lecture and demonstrated and things like that. So I absolutely do not want to say that that is consistent for everybody.
Mhm.
Like there are some very sacred things that I think that if it belongs to that culture and they don't want to share it, or they think it's theirs, that it's inappropriate to take it. But ours is, it's just, I don't know, it's just so small. And it's, you know, all of the weavers that I've talked to congratulate me, and they're really happy for me, and they're proud, and they're really happy that I'm doing so much teaching, and that this apprenticeship program, and that I teach kids, and I get a lot of support from the locals.
Well, I can really hear your passion and your love. You know, it's not like you're trying to exploit it, but that you're trying to take care of it. So
Yes, exactly.
yeah, I really hear that.
Yeah, it's my passion project. It's what matters to me. I gave up a much more lucrative lifestyle to come and do something more meaningful. And it is my heritage, and I grew up around it. And like, I want to leave it, at least give it a chance
Mhm.
to keep going. And I feel like I can do that. And so I'm doing that. And it's like, you know, I don't know. That's just how I feel. And that's just how I feel, I guess.
I think that's wonderful. Well, people are asking how to get a hold of you. And so we're going to talk about that too, because we have to stop for today. I
Oh,
can't
sorry.
believe it. I know. It's like, how did this happen? But thank you so much for being on here today. And I do want to talk about, when we bring up the slide, here we go. That is your Instagram, right?
Yes.
And that's the best way to get a hold of you, right?
Hold on, let me move. Yeah, Emily Trujillo Weaver. Yeah, that's mine. You can contact me on that. It's very small. I only recently started really promoting it, and I should probably do more with it, but you can see some of my pieces and some of what I'm doing and things like that. So, and I also have a Facebook page, but I basically abandoned it, but I'm trying to post. I'm going to try and post more on it. But yeah, you can reach me that way. You can also reach Centinela Traditional Arts, but my mom is so bad about getting emails to me that I would recommend getting through to my Instagram. And it's
There
like,
you go. Check out our Instagram. There are some great images there. You may not have a lot, but what you have is very nice.
yeah,
So thank you so much for being on here today. We do appreciate it. And I can't wait to see this exhibit. And
so
I hope it's very successful.
Thank you. I'm hoping it'll at least make a difference and like interest people and get them interested. So I'm like really have high hopes for it.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Warp, Weave a Real Piece, for being your sponsor today. It's kind of an appropriate sponsorship. And again, if you don't know much about this organization, go to their website, weavearealpiece.org, and learn more about the wonderful work that they do. We appreciate them doing that. If you would like to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your guild or your business, please go to our website and go to Textiles and Tea, the tab on our website, and you can see where you can sponsor an episode. If you are interested in the textile exchanges that we do, we got one coming up, and it's going to open up soon, and this is the scarf exchange. And this is kind of unique because they're doing something a little different. You can either do a winter scarf or a summer scarf, or like we look at it down here, a southern scarf or a northern scarf, or you can do one of both. So whatever you submit, that's what you'll get back. If you put in 2 scarves, you get 2 scarves back. So October is when the scarves are going to be due, so you've got about a month. Get that scarf made. If you want more information, go to weavespandye.org, and you can see all the details about the size and where you're going to ship it. Don't ship it to the HTA office, please. Information where to ship it is on our website. We want to thank everybody for supporting the programs and the activities of HTA. Your donations to the Fiber Trust and your memberships help things happen. When you donate to the Fiber Trust, or you're a sponsor for Textiles and Tea or Spinning and Weaving Week, that helps support these extra programs. Whether it's careers in textiles or all the different programs that we offer. And we do appreciate you all sponsoring us and supporting us this way. If you've missed episodes, you want to watch it again, you might want to watch this one again. It was fascinating. Not only did you get Textiles and Tea, you got a studio tour. Go to the HTA Facebook page, or you can go to YouTube. And I encourage you to sign up for the YouTube, because when you do, if you have a subscription, they will send you a notice to tell you a new episode was uploaded. Next week, we have Leslie Fesserman from the Yadkin Valley Arts Center. We're excited to have her there. Hope you all have a fabulous week. Be thinking about the people in Florida and the fires throughout the United States. Some of our staff are Floridians. We're holding our breath for them. But have a good week. I hope you stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Happy tea.